Great to be online. Pretty excited about this. I've been working on this project for quite some time, and it's pretty exciting. I've worked in schools for a very long time, about 15 years now, an ex-teacher myself, but have always had this passion about developing something that we can do for the kids. So I'm really pleased to be able to present it to you. So here we are, the Better Me project, Better Humans, Better Classrooms, and Better Me. So all about how we can create better little humans by looking at what we might do in terms of neuroscience and a few other things. So the focus of the Better Me project is to help schools build calm, capable learners who lead themselves. It's based on neuroscience or neuroscience informed. And I've deliberately developed it to align with the curriculum, in particular, the general capabilities, personal and social capabilities curriculum. I think it'll connect with a lot of other things like respect for relationships, but really that's the direction that it's gone. And it comes under a bigger banner of what I call developing schools of substance. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I think it is about that crossroads of making sure that we talk a lot now about well-being and how important that is for all of us in our society, let alone for learning. But how do we actually combine the two? And how do we start to bring some priority to that so that we're starting to develop that basis, for the learners to be at their best at whatever point in time, that is. So a little bit about me. I am an ex-teacher myself. Back in the 80s, I was a high school teacher, but I've since then been in corporate, done a number of things and found myself back in education about 15 years ago. My expertise is the neuroscience of human motivation, self-leadership, and powerful conversation. I am a master certified coach with the International Coach Federation and have been working with schools over the last 10 to 15 years, particularly school leadership. And as you'll see in a moment, starting to expand that a little bit now. And I want to welcome onto the call the lovely Alicia Savage.
Thank you.
Thank you. A recent deputy principal, Peter 12, head of curriculum, which is really the expertise she's bringing to the work that I'm doing and what we're doing here today. She is a leading humans coach, so she has worked with me for some time on the work that I sort of have been putting out there, and I guess is now, positioning herself as a curriculum consultant. As you'll see in a moment, I'm going to be partnering with Alicia on one part of the work that I do. So this idea of creating what I call a school of substance, and substance for me is defined as the ability of a human to be able to show up, with this very primitive brain, but in a very socially sophisticated and challenging world. So it's bringing it back to the substance of who we are, how we show up, and the fact that I think we've lost a little bit of ability to do that in the craziness of our world. And so we want to create these schools that work for humans. I think we've done a great job of data, we've done a great job of pedagogy, and I think now it's time to really focus again on who we are as humans and to help ourselves and our students to develop in that space. To me, it's very important that we take a systemic approach to our school culture, that we develop a shared mental model and a shared language around how we show up, around how we interact with each other, around what's reasonable and not and acceptable, so that we have this shared human experience. My wish is that the lived experience in a school community is a positive one. And I'm not sure we're there at the moment. I think the world is changing so rapidly and we're seeing challenges with parents, with students and teachers. It's all tough. So I think it's worth us finding a way to carve out some time to see if we can do something about that. So the system that I've been developing over the years, I feel is now complete. The third pieces are there. The first is, and many of you may have seen my work around conversations of substance. And this is the work I've been doing, particularly with leaders. And it is how we take a brain-based approach to our conversations, but how we actually
Michelle, something's happened there and you've just muted. Sorry about that, not sure.
There we go. Am I back on?
Yes, thank you.
Interesting. All right. Let me go back to the beginning of this slide. So Yes, so Conversations and Substance is the work that I've been doing with a lot of leaders, probably over the last 10, 15 years, an accredited program, but really focusing on putting humans at the center of our conversations and every interaction that we have, so that we're actually working with the human brain as opposed to against it. And I think a lot of our traditional ways of working do, as we now know with the new science, work against the human brain. The second piece that we're looking at today is the Better Me Project. So, a neuroscience-based curriculum-aligned program for the general capabilities. And as you'll see, my idea is not to have something that is just for a particular year level or a particular target audience, but something that grows in layers. And we're starting at grade 3, and the idea is that we will be working all the way through to grade 12. So we get this language and this capability over time that we build. And the thing that I'm partnering with Alicia on is Insightful Classrooms, where we're going to combine some of the work that I already do with leaders and in the conversation space with the idea of connecting and reigniting in classrooms, helping teachers understand how to, I guess, actually achieve more with less stress, but be able to connect the curriculum, the pedagogy, and facilitate the insight in the room so they're not doing all the work and the push. And I'm pretty excited about where that might go. But today, it's Better Me. So the challenge in schools, well, we know that behaviour challenges are escalating. We know that reactivity is rising. Wellbeing and self-leadership can't be an extra anymore. No, it now does have to be embedded. We don't have a choice. If the kids aren't showing up functional, if the teachers aren't showing up functional, we're really challenged with the learning piece. Well, the feedback I got, which is probably what drove me to do this, is that there's a lot of, there's a scattering of programs, but they don't necessarily connect. I've got something for our grade 3s and something for our grade 7s and something whatever, but where do they connect? Where is the shared language and the shared mental model around that? And of course, it is required by the curriculum, but where do we spend the time? Where do we find the time to write this curriculum and make this come to life? So we've tried to sort of do the work for schools. What's the real issue, though? It does require a sense of vulnerability and commitment from teachers, and yet teachers are struggling themselves. So I do think there is a challenge there, and I think this is why the systemic approach is important. We have to help everybody in the community, and that is going to be a little bit of a challenge. Some teachers are reluctant to teach it, don't feel qualified, or don't have a personal interest in that. That can be a challenge. Therefore not taken seriously, or because it's not measured, you have a challenge with the kids as well, not taking this type of work seriously, when actually we know that it's probably the under the foundation of everything that we need in order to be good learners. And we want that consistency across a year level or a school. And so I think what we need is a dedicated program that's written to the curriculum that builds over years, builds and grows and layers. We use the same language, but we keep building on it and maybe making it more age appropriate as time goes on. We're looking for something that's systemic, as I said, a shared mental model and language, a program that's written for teachers by teachers. And I have spent a lot of time trialing this in a number of schools, about 4 years now, as we've perfected it and narrowed it down to exactly what is needed. So it's going to be as easy and off the shelf as possible, because at the end of the day, definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, something has to change. We need a disruptor. We need to actually look at this in a slightly different way. So I think we need to take students, and I think as students grow and develop as humans, they go on this journey that I'm calling from react to resolve, and I'll talk you through this. At the end of the day, all humans react, and certainly younger students have limited ability, because they have limited prefrontal growth yet, in regulating their emotions. So most things that's happened, they react to, they say and do things that potentially aren't useful, and we would expect, to be fair, a lot of our younger students to be in that react space anyway. So limited conscious awareness or ownership or accountability for their behaviour and choices. Heading up to reflect, where maybe they've got a bit of awareness, but limited ownership and accountability. It's not my problem. And not really maybe owning their behaviour and choices. It's someone else's fault. They made me do it. That type of thinking. To the point of then realising, so starting to understand and have this diagnostic thinking, which I believe we can bring effectively if we teach them about their brain and give them some language around that. So, what's going on in my brain? Why am I feeling this way? Oh, look at my behavior. I wonder what's driving that. And maybe starting to take ownership and a bit of accountability for their behavior and choices, leading up to the ability to reframe. And this is where we can start to help them become a little more insightful. They can take ownership, willing to take action, and sort of motivated, I guess, to grow and develop some strategies, some personal strategies that will start to take them forward into their life and their world to the point of resolve, meaning they have this level of committed thinking about what they're doing. They will actively take ownership and accountability, and they will take productive action, to resolve situations and resolve challenges. I will be sending you all this information, by the way, but just to kind of give us a sense, what we're really doing here is, and as I go through this, I'd like you to think about maybe a cohort or an individual child, or perhaps even the entire school. Where are your students sitting in terms of this ladder? So are they at the react space? And obviously there will be some context where you might go, a certain cohort is still at the react stage, but other cohorts or other individuals might be somewhere else depending on context. So that automatic non-conscious emotional reaction, disinterested in collaborative resolution, and unaware of the ARMA principles, which I will share with you in a moment, in those moments. To reflect, ability to pause and think about a situation. They can use the ARMA language that we're going to teach them, which is the foundational framework, but they're fairly unwilling to take positive action or admit ownership and accountability. Heading up to realise, the ability to diagnose and explain their feelings, behaviours and impact. I think when we can actually understand what's going on and describe it, we're in a much better chance to be able to get kids to work through what they then, would like to do and feel that they can do to take action. And they can recognise their contribution to the situation. They can own their 50%. How much of this is mine? Not just everyone else's, but maybe a little resistance still to taking ownership, to being able to reframe and self-regulate and choose more constructive responses, willing to accept, admit, take ownership of the situation, and of course then at the resolve stage, ability to confidently let go, to focus forward, implement those resolution strategies, and they're living the principles. So that language is really in every part of, their everyday vernacular. So as you're reflecting on that, and feel free to put in the chat if you wish, but, where might some of the, do you have some students who are living in React? Do you have some that are maybe at the realise stage? So we're going to give you also very soon a diagnostic that you can use so that you can actually look at a particular cohort or year level and make an assessment of where you think they're sitting at any point in time, which is, useful information in terms of as we go through the program. We are going to run a half-day workshop. Even if you haven't decided to purchase and you're interested in more, we'll talk about that in a moment, but we'll be looking at some of these scenarios. So, for example, if a teacher gives some critical feedback, these are the different reactions we might see that would give us an indication of the student's ability to exist at a different, at the different levels of the react to resolve model or ladder. So if you have any questions, do feel free to put them in the chat, but we will continue just because of time. So let's get into a bit of the science of being human. So we do know that emotional regulation is key to deep learning. We know that the brain can be rewired through reflection and repetition, and it rewires anyway. What we want to do is start to explain to our students that they get to choose where they pay attention, and attention changes the brain, and therefore they get to choose who they are and who they become, which I think is an incredibly powerful concept. We get them to learn how to spell it. Self-directed neuroplasticity, a very big, long, grown-up word, but it basically says I'm in control. I'm in control of my brain, and I'm in control of where I pay attention, and I can choose how and when and who I want to grow into as I grow up. We know that self-regulation predicts success more than IQ, so our ability to manage our emotional responses, and teacher clarity and self-leadership does equal high-impact learning. Lots of research, around those things. So we've certainly based what we're doing on those. The behavior thing I find is such a challenge. But I think before we teach behavior, we have to teach our students about the brain. We need to be able to have those conversations and get them to get that self-leadership and also social leadership. I think that's important, that the work that we do on well-being needs to be more than just, can I stay calm? Can I be resilient? All those things are great, but can I interact with others? Can I collaborate? Can I resolve an issue with someone else and have those conversations? And I think, my goal certainly and my vision is that by the end of, grade 9, 10, the social aspect of the students' ability to maintain their wellness and their focus is as much about themselves as it is about their social interactions. We can't teach learning strategies to dysregulated brains. It's just not possible. When the brain is in threat, it doesn't learn. It doesn't take in information. Pretty basic stuff you probably know, but certainly these are the things that underpin a lot of the work that we're doing here. So we know that when the brain is hijacked, they're in survival mode, learning shuts down. Literally, the chemical that needs to be being produced in the brain for learning and memory is no longer being produced. So they literally can't learn. Without self-awareness and regulation, it doesn't stick. The prefrontal can't engage until the brain is feeling in what we call a reward state, or a safe and regulated state. And we know from neuroscience that if we can develop self-regulation and executive function, those are stronger predictors of academic success and I think social success than IQ. So a little bit about the actual program, the package that we're looking at. So it's a self-leadership and social leadership program. It's unashamedly through the lens of neuroscience. Certainly there's some psychology and various other things, but we are very much taking the understand my brain perspective. It's very tangible, and we find that people respond to that well. We're looking at layering from year 3 through to year 12. Not all of those are written at this stage, but our recommendation is that, and because we have been very much focused on our trial schools with getting it right. But I would recommend that anyone that take on the program start with the foundational unit anyway, which is ARMOR-Me, because they're the five foundational principles that everyone needs to know in order to do the others. So we have a primary version and a high school version of that that you can start any age group on. Obviously, we're wanting kids to be a better version of themselves and us as well, and it is based on that science of humans. We have aligned it with the Australian curriculum. So the self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, social management. And I think it's a great framework because, as I said, I do think that the social aspect is important, particularly when we think about the challenges now with phones and avoiding, communication and interaction. I think we do need to make sure we're bringing that into the way we educate. The program is a series of units, and we have designed the units to different year levels. They don't have to necessarily be those year levels, but they're kind of around the age appropriateness. So definitely primary versus secondary. All of the units have 4 modules, except for ARMOR-Me that has 7, because we go beginning and end in the 5 principles, a minimum of 6 hours per module. So you're looking at about 24 hours of instruction, but it's quite flexible. You get the presentation slides, you get the workbook, the teacher guide. I'll show you a bit of a look at that in a moment with a lot of detail. Video content, I hired an Australian actor to do the videos so that the actual content of each sort of section within the module is introduced by video, and there's downloadable activities and interactive activities where, card sorts and bingo and things like that, so that we get the kids really engaged. And it's all about building our human armor. So I've mentioned this a few times now. And armor are the 5 human principles that are going to protect ourselves and others to support our future success. They help us bounce back. They help us be happy, healthy, helpful, and hopeful humans. And those 5 are awareness, acceptance, regulation, motivation, and accountability. And in the younger years, very much we focus on self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-regulation, self-motivation, self-accountability. And as we layer up through the years, we're focusing more on the external social aspect of that. So we want our students to be, self-aware. What are they noticing about their own experience? Aware of how they are impacting others, but also aware of how others might be impacting them and driving some of their behavior. We want them to get control of that. Accepting, so acceptance of self, acceptance of our mistakes, so the whole growth mindset stuff, and acceptance of other humans and the circumstances beyond their control. And consequences probably at this point as well. Self-regulation, so that ability to manage my own responses and reactions and emotions and maybe support my friends as well. Self-motivated, we talk about inside and outside motivation. We need both. What are my preferences around motivation? And doing a deep dive around that. And of course, accountability for my choices, my behaviors, and the consequences. I need to own those. The ultimate outcome are the 4 on the left here. So we're looking to create humans that are happy, healthy, and in this case, we're particularly looking at mental health, helpful and hopeful. And we certainly in time will be developing some diagnostics and ways to maybe track some of that. But for the time being, that is actually going to form the Year 6 leadership unit. We're going to look at 4 modules about happy me, healthy me, helpful me, and hopeful me. At the primary level, well, actually at all levels, each of those 5 principles has an I statement. So I notice, I respect, I control, I focus, and I own. You can see there's the primary version there with our little, Mr. Regulation superpower people. The high school version will be a little bit more sophisticated than that. But ultimately, what we're going to get the students to do is put their challenges through this ARMA filter. So what am I noticing? What am I aware of? What do I need to accept about this situation? How do I manage and control and regulate my response and my emotion and my judgment and my bias around that? How do I motivate myself to move in the right direction? And what do I need to own and be accountable for in this situation? This is the proposed ultimate units at this stage. So you can see there's an ARMA Me unit, a foundational unit at both the primary and the secondary level. At the moment, we're sort of targeting ARMA Me for Year 3 or 4, Friend Me Year 4, because that's when we seem to get a lot of the friendship conflict stuff happening. Brainy Me is Year 5 and Leader Me is Year 6, getting them ready to go to high school. At the secondary level, you've got ARMA Me and probably Resilient Me as well for Year 7. Social Me Year 8, Wise Me Year 9, Learner Me Year 10. These can be swapped around. If it makes more sense for your cohort to do Learner Me earlier, it won't be a problem to do that. And at the moment, I'm writing we're playing with a goal setting unit under the kind of Human Me, Future Me concept with my trial school. We're thinking at the senior level, we'll look to develop a number of standalone modules. So you can pick and choose. Whereas in the junior, within a unit, it builds in layers, if that makes sense. I'll pause quickly. Do we have any questions or anything in the chat or anything we need to focus on? And Alicia, anything you want to add as from a curriculum expert at this point?
No, nothing I really want to add. I think everything you've said is covered, Yeah, I think the big thing, and you're going to unpack it in a second anyway, is the way that everything does layer on. And even in the connection to curriculum, some of the units, we've gone in and we've connected them to, ethics and HASS and some of the English links. So there are other links in there that are more than just the general capabilities, which I think is really helpful. And yeah, that's it.
Beautiful. And that's why I have Alicia to connect all those things for me. All right, great. Let's keep going. So I like to talk about the fact that we need to go from well-being to well-doing. We talk a lot about well-being, but what are we doing about it? And I think we need to get really practical and functional around that. So we are trying to develop the project here as, it's not just a program, but a whole learning framework. How do we actually set ourselves up for success? From awareness to action, teaching students to notice, name, and navigate their brain state. We know that when we can label things, we can understand them, we can then make changes with them. We do, of course, need teachers to model the same mindset. We're hoping that as part of the implementation and the development, then the teachers are learning about this themselves. It will require a little bit of vulnerability, I think, to really connect with the kids on this level, but we'll be providing whatever support we can in the implementation phase. And here it is, highlighting that teacher's role, their ability to be present, their ability to ask the questions, to not be too worried about, are we covering all the content? It's about debriefing the fun activities and drawing out the gold and getting the kids to really reflect and think about their own life experience and how what they're learning can be useful for them and be motivated to do something about that. Because I believe that every conversation is a learning opportunity, even when they're difficult conversations. And if we can get our teachers and our whole community to that point to stop and take those moments, then I'm hoping we can support people to be in that more healthy state. Probably the best way for you to do some further investigation is to go to the website where you can download a number of module samples, but definitely the teacher orientation, which is a really detailed booklet about all the thinking and everything that you would need to know and what your teacher would need to know in order to implement the program. Here are some of the key messages that you'll see scattered throughout the entire program. The first is that your brain is a learning superpower, really understanding how your brain works, the whole idea of neuroplasticity, of rewiring, of pruning, because it is really important for us to understand that for two areas of our students' lives, there is a lot of pruning going on. And we need to understand that, and we need to know that if we don't keep the focus on certain things, our students will learn that. Their brains will get rid of that. So I think we have, quite the focus there. We're building their human armor. We've talked about that. So getting that mental toolkit. You can be in control of your brain. I talked to that before as well. And you are not your brain. This kind of metaphoric idea of being able to separate the behavior or the choices and going, well, my brain did that. Is that really me? Can I overcome that now and bring that back? And if we separate it, we can get rid of some of the more, the sort of self-deprecating challenges that can get in the way. Normal, not useful. We want people to understand, everyone in our community, that all behavior is normal. It's just not always useful. And normal meaning our brain ultimately is protecting us from all sorts of things, but a lot of the things that our brain wants us to do and encourages us to do aren't necessarily useful for either our social or our mental situation. Asking questions like, is this helping or hindering the situation? But also being very clear with our students that as we work through this is an explanation, but it's not an excuse. It's an explanation for the behavior and the choices and understanding my brain and those sorts of things, but it's not an excuse, because we're ultimately asking this question, is the better me, is this the better me you want to be? And getting that sort of consistently across the program. A very quick look, you'll see, again, you can download all these materials from the website, but each module, we have an outline there. You can see this first part, module 1, module 2, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 of the first module within the unit. And remember, there's 4 units. And 4 modules and then phases within that. You can see here the learning intentions, success criteria, very detailed activities. Here's the slide. Here's what to say to the students. And here are some questions that you can ask. And where the questions are eliciting sort of deeper thinking, in the appendix, we've actually fleshed that out for the teacher to say, here are some of the ideal messages that you want to draw out. So again, teachers don't have to do a lot of thinking. If they've read through, it's that ability to just have the conversations, in the moment. You can also see reference to each of the slides and then the differentiation. So, support and extension suggestions. If you go to the website, you'll be able to download a copy of the teacher orientation, a sample teacher guide, a workbook, activities, those sorts of things. And for every module, so remember 4 modules per unit, we provide a parent information sheet that you can also send home about what the students are learning and how they can support that at school. So we have this bigger picture, of course, about a school of substance, this systemic approach, and I think the Better Me sits really well in the centre of that, because at the end of the day, it's about developing our students. And if we can be involved in that at all levels, I think we can start to, by osmosis even, have everybody starting to believe in that, approach. So some of you may get the joke here, but the one big beautiful QR code, if you want to grab that QR code and put in your name and your email, we will send you a brochure, a link to the diagnostic that I said earlier, and a number of other links and things that might be useful for you if you want to go further. I would highly recommend, if you've got some interest, to think about coming along to the complimentary workshop that we're holding, which is next Friday. A good half a day where we'll go deeper into this, really have a closer look at the materials in the ARMA-Me programs, and some further QR codes there. But if you get on the first one, we'll be sending all of that to you anyway. And I can see a question there, which I will address in a moment. And that's the diagnostic if you want to get that. So how do pilot schools endeavour to bring parents on board so it's a consistent approach? So at this stage, all we've done is I'm very keen to extend to this. So for me, the whole system will eventually be ARMA-Me as the foundation. Certainly some of the trial schools have used that framework as their entire wellbeing program and built everything around that. We'll certainly look at those case studies in the workshop, or if you make a time with me, we can talk you through what some of the schools have been doing. I would love to see, us be able, or even schools to be able to run their own parent nights, parent information sessions. And certainly we've given you some information to send home to parents as well, which you can pick and choose and throw out. The other thing is that, anyone can sign up to this now. We've started the Better Little Humans blog. And that is for teachers and educators and parents and carers. And so every week we'll be sending out tips and ideas that will relate sort of to the Better Me. But if a school isn't using the Better Me project specifically, the blog is still relevant. So it's really more kind of generic. And so certainly it's a great education tool for teachers who are teaching it to keep, them learning, but also to send out. So I would love to see schools say, hey, if you're interested in working like we are with your little ones to make sure they become better big ones, then here's a blog that you can sign up to. So.